Hi everybody, it's Mr. Jean. Since creepypastas are now going to be a recurring thing on this channel, I wanted to think about the best way to do it. And that reminded me of the days of listening to horror dramas on AM radio with my dad. And I kind of want to try and emulate that feeling with this series. So welcome to the first episode of Pasta AM. Today we have a series of stories concerning the brothel of Lady Jade. I hope you enjoy. The Rules of Lady Jade's Brothel. Congratulations on your new employment as one of Lady Jade's goddesses. You will find your employment here rewarding and well compensated. Get ready to feeling like the goddess you are. Please be aware of the following rules for all servicing staff. Number 1. Condoms are 100% mandatory and required in all cases with all clients. Number 2. When you are hired by a client, your menu of available services will be presented to them. You are not required to perform any action you have not pre-agreed to and have added to the menu. You may add or remove any services at any time you wish. Number 3. Health checks every 2 weeks are mandatory. There is an on-site nurse at all times to handle any medical issues. If you ever feel unwell for any reason, please immediately contact the nurse. Number 4. If the nurse cannot handle what you have, she may refer you to the special nurse and contact her. Please do not be alarmed by this and do not be shocked by the special nurse's appearance or dress. She is a very uniquely skilled professional. Number 5. There are 5 rooms where clients are serviced. There is a 6th room besides the lobby, nurse's office, service rooms, and shower room. Do not ever enter this room. Do not look into the peephole or cracks in the door. If you ever see someone entering this room, do not follow them. If you see someone leaving it, do not ask them about it or converse with them in any way, even if it's someone you have talked to in the past. Number 6. Alcohol or drug use during work hours is completely prohibited. Number 7. A shower after servicing a client is mandatory 100% of the time. Number 8. The special soaps and shampoos provided in the bathroom are mandatory for all showers. Do not bring your own, and do not ever take a soap or shampoo from the bathroom with you. Number 9. There is an undressing room before the shower room. Before you enter, you must remove all clothing or personal items and put it in one of the lockers. Absolutely no clothing can be worn into the shower room. If you do accidentally bring any clothing into the room, find one of the sealed plastic bags in the room. Place any articles of clothing in it, seal it very tight, and take it to the undressing room and hit the red button. A staff member will bring you a robe and will take the bagged clothing to be burned. Number 10. Please do not converse in the showers at all, even if another goddess is using it at the same time who you are friendly with, and please do not ever mention anything you see in the showers once out to another goddess. If you see any odd marks on her body, mind your own business. Number 11. We do not have a goddess named Erica who works here. If you meet a woman claiming to be Erica, cease conversation with her and notify security immediately. Number 12. If you notice a strange birthmark that resembles a skull anywhere on a client's body, terminate the session and hit the red button to notify security. You will be taken to the nurse's office and she will immediately contact the special nurse. Number 13. Do not be afraid if you see someone dressed as a law enforcement officer on site. If they ask for what's available, go to the safe in the lobby and use the code 321814. Remove $500 and provide it to the law enforcement officer. Number 14. We have law enforcement clients. Do not be alarmed if any wish to hire you. Service them like you would any other client. Number 15. We are open 24 hours a day, with the exception of between the times of 3:45 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. Feel free to hang out in the lobby during those hours, and make sure any clients are aware business must terminate before the time if being hired. Please do not question anyone you see entering any rooms during this time. Number 16. Always count your tips and write it on a receipt after a session. If the tip equals a prime number, burn the money. We will compensate you. Number 17. As you learned during orientation, Lady Jade has a heart-shaped birthmark on her right breast. If she ever has a strange voice or something seems off about her, you can request to see it. Do not feel shy in doing so. Lady Jade will always comply. If the woman refuses to show her breast or doesn't have the birthmark, it's not Lady Jade. Do not obey her orders, leave immediately, and notify security. And most importantly of all, make sure to enjoy yourself here at Lady Jade's. Now that you know the rules of Lady Jade's brothel, perhaps you'd like to learn more about the goddesses. One of them was kind enough to share her story with us. First of all, just know I'm not trying to give you a sob story or looking for sympathy for how I ended up working there. It's a standard story. Here I was, a 43-year-old single mother who lost her job after over 15 years as a receptionist at an office that closed, and then learned that type of job experience doesn't open doors to way better jobs. And good luck finding a secretary job that pays as well as I got after all those raises. I ended up on Medicaid. Thank God for Obamacare. I took a waitressing job for lack of anything else I could get, and hated everything about it except the friendship I struck up with a younger colleague. I felt cool for a while. I had a good friend who could have been my daughter. But nothing could prepare me for when she was quitting the job because she had found a much better one, and that she thought I'd be great for it too. And then she told me what it was. I assumed it was a joke at first, and then almost fell over once I realized it wasn't. She assured me she had already been working there for the past 2 weeks, that it wasn't that bad, and I didn't have to worry about legal repercussions. The owner knew people. I asked why on earth she would recommend I start at my age anyway, and she assured me the brothel prided on offering women of all races, body types, and ages, and was lacking in ones with a mature look, and she thought I'd be perfect. After a bit, I went from thinking, who would want to pay to fuck a 43-year-old, to realizing that I was hard on myself. I was still pretty. I got complimented all the time. Male customers constantly leered at me. I could do it. I didn't want to, but then came a hard night of realizing if I couldn't start earning a lot more, my daughter would be taking a gap year and having to work full-time to save up her own money for college. After a long night where I didn't so much sleep but collapse from exhausting after all my crying, it hit me that this was the only right path forward. I would give my life for my daughter. This, in comparison, was nothing. And with a heavy heart, I gathered up the courage to ask her the next time I saw her how I could get signed up, and proceeded to cry some more that night. 1 month in, and I felt so silly having acted that way before. This was seriously the best job I ever had. I was getting laid every night I worked. No more having to go through the awkwardness of dating at my age. And could see why we were called goddesses. That's exactly how we were treated by the guys. Nothing but pure respect and adoration. My favorite was the foot fetish guys who would worship my feet and suck my toes as foreplay. I basically sat there and got paid for having my feet pampered. And I can't believe it took me 43 years to learn just how heavenly having my toes sucked is. I had braced myself for legions of ugly losers. Nothing like that at all. Most were better looking than your typical guy at a club, and almost none were utterly repulsive. Most just wanted completely no strings attached sex, had low self-confidence or weird kinks. Yeah, I got asked to do weird shit, but then I realized I have to empty my bladder anyway. If some weirdo will pay to piss on him instead of pissing in a toilet for free, why not? I technically wasn't the oldest woman who worked there, as Lady Jade was well into her 50s, and she still had clients of her own. But I ended up being the teen mom of sorts, and admired by the other girls. It wasn't perfect. I still had to worry about being recognized at church or PTA or at any of my daughter's basketball games, and the fact that my daughter isn't a moron and obviously would soon realize that this wasn't some waitressing gig at a 24-hour restaurant that I told her this was. It didn't help that my daughter was a rebellious teenager in a completely different way. She ended up being a devout Christian, far more than me, who wasn't happy that I had sex with multiple men after my divorce and got offended when I had a talk with her about getting a birth control prescription. But it wouldn't be permanent either. I'd get my daughter a nice college fund and then find myself another office job, and that'd be that. First time I attended church Sunday evening with my daughter and went straight to work afterwards, I assured myself it was okay, because Jesus hung out with women like me all the time, and thought that'd be a clever one to tell her once she realized the truth, but that could wait. For now, I just fucking loved the job. The weirdness of the place kind of gradually gnawed on me. The rules were weird. At first I thought, whatever, it's a brothel. But I had a hard time gathering what was going on. After paying off police a few times, I realized this wasn't a typical bribe. The cops looked as nervous frequently as I was, and most seemed unwilling, not eager to get bribes. I never ran into this mysterious Erica, thankfully, but I heard stories and rumors. My friend who referred me disappeared from the job in a month. I figured the place would have high attrition anyway, and Lady Jade's weird hang-up about prime numbers might be her just being a superstitious weirdo. But I couldn't shake the feeling there was something deeper to it. I couldn't get over the mind-your-own-business attitude towards everything, that I couldn't ask another goddess I had grown close to why I saw her entering the mysterious sixth room, why we couldn't talk while showering, or that I had to give up and have some pretty nice lingerie burned once I accidentally went into the shower room before fully disrobing. But the weirdest thing was the closed 45 minutes. Those times weren't too bad. The girls would just hang out in the lobby. There was a TV, a Blu-ray player, and a pretty good selection of TV shows on Blu-ray to watch, but I couldn't put my finger on what was happening. At first I thought the rooms might be cleaned, until I realized the weird figures I saw going into the rooms weren't carrying cleaning supplies of any type. They were always hooded and wearing all black, and spoke and whispered to each other in a language I had never heard before and unlike any I ever heard. I saw some carrying odd tools in time to time, but couldn't figure out what they were or what it was for. But I could overlook all that. I fucking loved my job. Until about 4 months in. I showed up to start my shift, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., as usual. Lady Jade was there and eagerly announced I had a reservation who requested me as soon as possible and would be in room 4. I went in there and saw probably one of the best looking clients I have ever seen. He was quite young, at least 20 years younger than me, and had the perfect haircut, facial stubble, body, and muscles of a pro athlete. I got so excited. Then the realization I was about to fuck him hit me. I actually got embarrassed and anxious. So I sat down and tried to chat with him. I asked him why such a young stud like him wanted an old hag like me. "The menu. You offered what I want. No one else does," he replied. I felt chilled a bit. His voice was off, like it somehow echoed in a way that human voices don't. I tried to ignore that and think about what he said. Then I realized he was probably referring to anal. I had just added it to the menu a week earlier. No requests yet, but I was getting very sexually adventurous and excited to try. So I asked him, and he confirmed that's what he wanted. Now, I was getting nervous. Not from the fact that I'd be doing anal, far from my first time, but from the strangeness of his voice, and the weird way he spoke in short sentences and phrases. I reminded myself it's entirely possible for a gorgeous guy to have Asperger's or something, and I've heard weird voices before. The worry kind of faded once I undressed and I saw his dick. Good God, of all the dicks I had seen at this job, I had never seen one so shapely, perfectly textured, and perfectly sized before. He wasn't circumcised, but hey, I like that too. So I collected payment and began. I grabbed the lube and one of my toys and started to prepare myself. I won't go into details of the act. Just know that I loved it. As I lay in bed savoring the good ache I felt and accepted his tip, my euphoria turned to terror as he turned around and got dressed. He had a strange skull-shaped birthmark on his backside, right above his chiseled and otherwise perfect ass. I remember the rules. I panicked. I froze in place as he got dressed, threw a tip at me, and walked out the room. I threw on a robe and ran to the nurse. It's nothing, I told myself as I went there. I let the nurse know what happened. She turned a shade of pale. "Wait here," she said, and walked off to call someone up. I realized she was calling the special nurse. She informed me that she would be here in a half hour. It felt like an eternity, but then a nurse and Lady Jade entered the room, and behind them followed a woman shrouded in black, much like the people entering the rooms at night. I could make out her face, but her appearance was bizarre. She could have been anywhere from 30 to 60 years old. Her hair was pure white and stringy, and her eyes had some weird, unnatural look to them. "You can be dismissed," she told the nurse and Lady Jade. Her voice had the same strange quality as the client, a weird echo, and something just not human sounding about it. "I wish I could say this won't hurt you, but it'll hurt a lot less than the alternative," she told me. She then pulled out a bag and a strange-looking knife. I cried as I felt the sheer pain of it jabbing into my leg. I woke up. I laid naked on the nurse's table. I felt groggy and my memory slowly collected again. What happened?" I groggily asked. The normal nurse was there watching over me. "You're fine. You're good," she replied. "You were out for about an hour." I felt my hand over my leg and remembered the incision. There was still a slight ache. I felt a scar on my leg there. How did the scar develop in an hour? I thought. I wanted to ask the nurse, but couldn't find the words. She handed me a bag. There's a bottle of pills in here. Take 2 a day for the next 5 days. You have the next 2 weeks off. There's a bunch of cash in there to compensate you. Please shower and then return here to get dressed and gather your belongings. We're getting a cab to take you home. I looked in the bag. There is way more than what I make in 2 weeks here, I replied. Consider it hazard pay, said the nurse in a very nervous tone. Why do I have this scar already? This scar seemed like it'd be weeks old. You said it just happened an hour ago. The nurse ignored my question. Please, just shower and we'll get you out of here. I did. I got dressed back at her office, grabbed the bag, and was escorted by the nurse to the cab. I sat silently in the back as I was taken straight home. I took the pills as requested, but didn't return after 2 weeks. I hid the cash in my closet, but it unnerved me so much seeing it. I didn't feel right depositing it all at once and knew that would attract attention. So I deposited some and opened another bank account and deposited more. Some I donated. I felt weird throwing some in my church's collection plate considering where the money came from, but at least it'd go to something good. The story has a happy ending. My old boss from before I got laid off called me one day and informed me he landed a new job at a big corporation and had been given a generous budget to hire a personal assistant. He wanted me, and it paid more than before. I took the job and figured I could put that strange incident in the past. There was just one issue. My daughter. I couldn't lie to her for life, so one night I decided to just tell her. I downed 2 glasses of wine, asked her to take a seat, and that I had something to confess to her. She took it surprisingly well. She told me the same thought I had, that Jesus hung out with whores, and talked to me about how I was a victim and the one being exploited, and about how this wouldn't be needed if we ran society in a more moral way and looked after the downtrodden. She was angry about one thing, though, that I had lied before, and the excuse that I did it for her. She explained to me that she loved me as much as I loved her, and then asked if I seriously thought that she would consider having her own mother whore herself out to be preferable to taking a gap year. I broke down in tears, realizing how short-sighted I was. She comforted me and told me that she now realized that she is incredibly blessed. I know just how much my mother loves me, was what she said. I stopped a bit and then started crying again, but now tears of joy. I didn't tell her that for the most of my time there, I actually loved the job. I was reminded of a joke I heard about how all teenagers like to pretend that they are the only person on earth who was produced asexually, knowing that her mom actually enjoyed all that sex and kinky shit probably would actually traumatize her. And then it also hit me that perhaps that was her main objection to me being open about having sex after my divorce. Her beliefs on non-marital sex maybe not being the main issue. Regardless, we reached an agreement that neither one of us would bring it up ever again, and she would never tell anyone else. We would just pretend the job never happened. I decided to put it behind me and not even think about it anymore. It was a bizarre episode of my life, but it didn't need to impact it anymore. Except for one recent time. I went on my first post-prostitution date with a widowed father of one of my daughter's church youth group friends. We went out for a few drinks and thought it was going well. I then noticed, sitting not too far from me, was a strange figure, shrouded in black. Curiosity piqued, so I excused myself to the bathroom and walked by that person. They were mumbling some things in that strange language and seemed to have their eye on me. So I walked back to the stool. I don't really like this place. Can we head somewhere else? I asked him. Sure, he replied, downed his drink and walked out. I realized how much of a weirdo I probably seemed since I suggested that bar, but he never asked why. And then later that night he drove me home. As he drove down a city street, I realized I would be passing Lady Jade soon. Whatever, I thought. It's just a building. You don't work there anymore. But when the block approached, I shut my eyes tight. It's always so nice to meet someone who enjoys their work, though I do wonder why she shut her eyes so tight there at the end. But anyway, when it comes to brothels, it takes two to tango, so to speak. And on that note, one of Lady Jade's clients was nice enough to share his story with us. So, let's get into it. Look, I'm not proud of what I did, obviously. I'm just glad I can report this anonymously. But please know up front, I'm not a stereotypical sleazy John. I never even thought of hiring a hooker until one day I laid in my apartment and turned 33. It hit me that I hadn't been laid in a whole year. I had a good excuse. The previous year had seen my fiancée of 5 years break off our engagement. I was first heartbroken, then depressed and angry, and then just nihilistic. Dating didn't seem to matter. I hated having to get back into the pool. It's not that I was too old. I had just recently attended an aunt's wedding who had gotten married for the first time at over 50, after all. It was just too much work I wasn't used to. I didn't want to use Tinder or any of those other silly apps, but trying to meet girls would take work. I suppose I couldn't keep pushing it off forever, but then the idea of just buying it popped into my head. I did some research, found some sites, familiarized myself with the lingo, all the while convincing myself I'd never actually do this. It was all out of curiosity. But one place stood out: Lady Jade's Healing Arts Center. I found talk about it and their website. What they supposedly did wasn't clear, just vague bullshit about how they employed goddesses who'd bring healing and relief. All sorts of euphemisms. It was the most obvious front ever. I found their website, but it was cheaply done and obviously not updated in years. The few girls pictured on it looked hot, even if the pics were out of focus and often not showing faces. My curiosity was piqued, but I didn't plan on ever going there. It took an odd occurrence one night. My air conditioning broke, and it was a hot fucking July night. I laid in bed sweating, wondering how to get to sleep. I couldn't get a new unit or get it fixed until the next day, so I figured my only choice was to find a hotel for the night. I decided to go cheap. After all, this would just be a one-night thing. So I headed to the part of town that the cheap motels are. And then I saw it in person. It should shock no one that Lady Jade's was also in the area. I stopped. I realized I could go inside. It was open 24 hours after all. It probably had air conditioning. I parked a few blocks away, in shame almost, went to a 24-hour gas station and made a large ATM withdrawal. As I walked over to it, I realized that if I went in, I was stuck doing it. I couldn't make up some story about wrong address or not being sure what it was at this hour. I slowly paced away and then to it again. Come on, I thought. It was too prominent and too classy from the reviews I read to be some nasty human trafficking front. What's the harm? YOLO, I thought as I took a breath and walked right in. There was AC, and it was well painted and decorated. A young and very well-dressed woman greeted me at the front behind a desk. "Welcome to Lady Jade's," she said with a perky and chipper demeanor. Reminded me of a classy restaurant hostess. "Have you been here before?" No," I answered almost under my breath. Didn't deter her. "Please take a seat," she said, and pointed toward a comfy leather chair nearby. She handed me a tablet. "This includes the goddesses currently on staff and services provided. Please let me know of your selection, and I will make sure the goddess is ready and the room prepared." I looked at the tablet and the pics. There were 5 women available. Mina, a petite and delicate-looking young Asian. Jackie, a voluptuous and curvy black woman who appeared about early 30s. Caroline, a fairly mature-looking white brunette, probably mid-40s. Kiki, a thin but full-bodied young blonde, mid-20ish. And Carly, a very young-looking, perky redhead who was probably just barely legal. Their menus were next to it with all sorts of euphemisms that I had read online, but I wasn't looking for anything kinky, just an easy lay. I walked up to the receptionist and I requested Kiki. I was informed that she would be available in room 8 in about 10 minutes, and was provided with a glass of water while I waited. Best water I've ever had, to be honest. My heart was racing when the receptionist announced that my room was ready and led me there. I noticed 5 rooms labeled 1, 4, 6, 8, and 9. That's weird, I thought. I also saw a bath shower room that had a medical symbol on it too. Probably also led to some sort of first aid kit or nurse office, and an unmarked 6th room next to all the main rooms. I stepped into room 8. Kiki met me. She was indeed the same woman in the pics. When I told her the euphemism of what I wanted, she laughed. "You're here, and okay. No need to use that talk," she said. "Just tell me what you want." Fine, I replied. "I want to fuck you." She laughed and replied, "I can provide that," with a sultry tinge. I undressed and got on the bed. She looked at me, sized me up, and then grabbed the appropriate sized box of condoms from a drawer and then removed her clothing. I won't get into the details, but I wasn't regretting my pick once I saw her naked. "So, do you like your job?" I said nervously while she stripped. She assured me that she did. It was very safe and, as she put it, a combination of my 2 favorite things, sex and money. This ain't a porno, so I won't go into the details of what happened. Just know that my head was spinning when it was done, and in a very good way. Did she know how to please? I gave her a large and deserved tip. I suppose it was time to be on my way soon, but laid in bed, soaking in the feeling. She informed me that we had to leave soon. It was 3:20 a.m., and at 3:30 it was the time when the rooms were closed. Alas, I had to get dressed quickly. We both did and walked out of the room. Frankly, my appetite was whet. I needed more. My libido was still racing, and I knew I could do a second round. Maybe after the closed room time. I sat in the lobby as the girls watched TV, an episode of The Big Bang Theory. Kiki assured me I could hang out too and hire her or another girl for another round once the rooms reopened at 4:15. But I would have to not speak to anyone but the girls. It was then I noticed the strange hooded figures going into the rooms. Must be cleaning, I thought, although they were weird custodial staff. Weird uniforms and seemed to be muttering some odd language, not one I've ever heard. It wasn't until after I left that I realized they weren't carrying any cleaning supplies either, but that really wasn't on my mind. Kiki also wasn't present, explaining policy required a shower after every single session, so I was sitting with the other girls, lounging around, and one approached me. "Hi, I'm Erica," she said. I turned and saw her. Erica had a unique look. Not all guys would go for her. Very voluptuous and curvy BBW. By BMI standards, she was probably obese, though not morbidly so. Her breasts didn't so much hang as they practically spilled out of her corset. She had nerdy, thick glasses, and her hair was so red it looked like a long trail of fire rolling off her head down to her waist. She was probably 20s, but who knows where in that range. In a weird way, her flaws kind of enhanced the sexy things about her. I was intrigued. We talked a bit. She was very vague about her background and how long she had been doing this. Simply said, "a while," and didn't give many details at all. Having been to strip clubs, I figured girls would do this to try to land clients, and she would offer me a room once this was done. Sure enough, after a bit she said, "Maybe you'd like to come play with me." I caved in. My libido was still rushing, and I still had leftover cash. She led me into room 9. Room 9 looked exactly the same on the inside as room 8, unsurprisingly. I was a bit shocked as soon as we got in that she started undressing immediately. I slowly got out of my clothes, and she sat down naked next to me. I looked at her body. I was starting to regret my choice. There were skin rolls abound. Her areolas were huge, and she was probably one of the few women today who went all natural, with no pubic hair shaving at all, just a curly forest down there. She had more tattoos than I typically care for, but I could overlook that. I've dated overweight women before and can appreciate a BBW, but she just seemed weird in ways I can't explain well. "So, what do you want to do?" she asked me. Maybe just a blowjob?" I replied. All of my clothes were off now except for my underwear. I gradually slid them off, exposing myself to her finally. I was getting nervous. She smiled and said perkily, "Sure," and went down on me. I got a little worried. I remembered Kiki saying condoms were always mandatory for everything, but she didn't bother with a condom. Sure, it's not like I could get her pregnant, but still had STD concerns. I thought about stopping her, but for now, didn't. I watched her back from my position. Her tattoos seemed to move in a weird way, not with the body's movement. I couldn't quite make out what they were. Very odd symbols, not the sort of Chinese ones people get tattooed either. She also had some moles and birthmarks, and they too didn't seem to stay in place. I was getting more and more unnerved. I started to lose my cool and my arousal. Then something hit me. Why wasn't she on the menu I got when I came in? Maybe she could have started her shift later? But why start after 4 a.m.? The weirdness just overwhelmed me. Sorry, but I don't think I'll be doing this," I remarked once she completed one of her sucks. I got up and immediately threw my underwear back on. She looked very sad. We can try some more. I know you might be nervous, she said. Sorry, I replied. I think I should leave. I gave her a $20 tip for the time so far and quickly threw my clothes on. She gave a very annoyed, huffing reaction and got dressed as well. I didn't bother looking. I just tore out of the room. As I walked outside, I ran into the receptionist again. "Thank you for stopping at Lady Jade's," she remarked. "Did you enjoy your time here?" "Well, I gotta be honest," I said. "Well, the first girl was mind-blowing. The second was a bit disappointing." "Oh? Well, what goddesses did you see?" she said in a somewhat disappointed tone. "Kiki and Erica," I replied. Her look turned to confusion and a bit of panic. "Erica?" she replied. Yes, Erica. She has kind of a unique look, as you probably know, and that lured me in, but in the end, she wasn't for me. I'm sure there are some guys who appreciate that look of hers, of course." "What did you do with Erica?" she stated firmly and in a very serious tone. Well, nothing, really," I said with some embarrassment. "I started to receive oral from her, but broke it off barely a minute in." "Okay, good," the receptionist said. She looked slightly relieved, but still concerned. She handed me 5 $20 bills from under the counter. "Please take this. I hope your next visit to Lady Jade's goes better." I was a little shocked, but wasn't going to dispute a partial refund. I walked out of there and back to my car, confused as ever. Suffice to say, I never returned to Lady Jade's. Just 2 months after that incident, I started hanging out with a new woman at my job. We eventually fell for each other. She's a beautiful, loving, and truly caring single mother, and I want no one else in the world. I'm not trying to rush into an engagement this time, but it means my intimate needs are being met. But then one day we decided to check out a restaurant in the area that had good reviews she wanted to go to. No finding a sitter that night, so we ended up just taking her daughter with us. I ended up on the street near Lady Jade's as we went there, and the girl took note. "Wow, that's a weird building," she called out from the back seat. "What is that place?" she remarked. "I don't know, Emily," her mother said with a sigh. "We'll be there soon. Please, just stay calm." "Yeah, I don't know either. Honestly, in this area, probably better not knowing," I remarked as I drove by it. Well, I'm glad to hear things worked out for this guy, though I do wonder what would have happened had he gone all the way with the mysterious Erica. Well, whatever's going on at Lady Jade's, it goes both ways. Up next we have a tale from a customer of the female persuasion. My life had been a total roller coaster before this. First the up. I had met the perfect girl. It was something that years ago would only have been a dream. I was going to be married. I was going to be legally married to the perfect woman. And then we'd buy a house, and after that, one of us, or hell, maybe even both, would be inseminated, and we'd have our dream family in a home just like I desired. But then the downs started. After we moved in, she started to lose interest in me. She claimed to be saving money as a reason to not go out with me much anymore, but for some reason, she would disappear at night, claiming obscure errands or going grocery shopping on emergencies, and didn't seem to be saving any money. The worst day of my life came not too long after that. I was at home, having a day off from work, though my fiancée didn't. She sent me a text asking if I could see her purse. She thought she had forgot it. Sure enough, it was on the kitchen table. I let her know that it was there, and then the desire to go snooping, it overtook me. It felt invasive, but I had to know if there was anything in there that might explain her lost interest. I figured I'd just find the typical purse items and shrug it off and move on. So the shock overcame me when I found a strange business card labeled Lady Jade's. I was confused at first and wondered if perhaps this was just an oddly named hairstylist or beauty salon. Part of me just wanted to assume it was and move on. But I'm too curious. Besides, why hasn't she told me about the place? So the address and the name went into Google. I practically threw up once I realized what type of establishment this place was. My sadness turned to rage. I wanted to tell myself this was a misunderstanding, maybe something a friend slipped here that she just forgot about and it sat in her purse. But that couldn't be it. It made too much sense. The disappearing at night, the loss of interest in me, the way she seemed to never have money despite saving it. I just sat in the corner and cried for hours. I wonder what would have happened had she not been working a 12-hour shift, because if she had come home earlier, the shit would have really hit the fan. But by the time she was ready to get off, my anger had shifted to a colder. I wasn't going to just tell her off. I'd pretend I never found it, and then go visit the establishment myself, and then return with proof and show it to her. And then she could feel the same pain she inflicted on me. It was weird when she got home, and how I had to pretend nothing had happened. I came up with a cover story. She was going to be tired and want to go to bed. Meanwhile, I, not working weekends, would just claim that one of my coworkers invited me to a movie, and specifically mentioned some blatant chick flick that I know she'd have zero interest in seeing. So she could go to bed, and I'd join her and snuggle that night. Once I was back from being fucked like I deserved, and she had no doubt gotten. That's exactly what happened. She bought it, hook, line, and sinker, and I was headed out to the shady part of town I never headed out to. Once I parked on a parking ramp and left my car, I already felt freaked out and somewhat scared. Should have brought mace. A heavily tattooed muscular guy glared at me near the exit. My anger had dissipated into fear. I needed a drink to calm my nerves. Right next door was a gas station / convenience store liquor store, and I walked inside. I figured I could get one of those mini liquor bottles to get me relaxed and ready for fun. This was one of those stores where the clerk works behind bulletproof glass. I walked into line. I looked outside and saw two men smoking by the entrance, and one glared at me. To them, I was a target. I stood nervously in line. There was still a line even at this time. A tall, heavy-set black man stood in front of me. He turned around and glanced at me and instantly knew I wasn't from around here. I could feel it. "Know what? You can cut in line ahead of me," he remarked after turning around again. I smiled. The first good thing to happen to me today. "Thank you," I explained as I switched places with him. "It's fine. You should probably get out of here as soon as you can," he remarked. With a clear air of concern in his voice, the heavily tattooed and much more built female clerk glanced at me, seeming to think the same way. I silently paid for my bottle, and then stood in the corner of the store and immediately pulled up Uber. A driver was on his way, and I got to immediately enter his car once I left the store. He chuckled a bit about this being the shortest drive of the day for him, likely a whole whopping 3 blocks. It's funny how long that seems in the circumstances. And in no time, I was in front of Lady Jade's. I stepped outside and downed my mini bottle. I took a quick selfie in front of the place. Nice thing to show her when I gloated. I stepped inside. I was shocked, expecting some dingy place that would be just as likely to be shut down by the health department as the police. Actually, it felt more like a hotel lobby. Nice AC, well painted and decorated, and a nicely dressed young woman at the front desk. I doubted she was one of the hookers. "Welcome," she announced as I approached the desk and asked what I came for. I was wondering if you had anyone who services women," I said, trying to sound confident. "Absolutely," she announced. She handed me a tablet. "Have a seat and browse this. It has everyone on staff now. You can search by services offered. Female friendly is an option," she announced with a smile as I sat down. I browsed around the place. Now I started to feel a little weird. For starters, there were 6 rooms labeled 1, 4, 6, 8, and 9, and one left unmarked. I couldn't find any mention of 2, 3, 5, or 7, and what looked like a bathroom. I browsed my choices on the tablet. Currently 12 women, or goddesses, as they called them, available. Even with just 12, there was a wide variety, ranging in age from just barely legal to 40s, and at least one Black, Asian, and Latino woman. Also multiple voluptuous and curvy, and also thin women. I joked to myself that I could see why my fiancée enjoyed the place, and maybe I could forgive her. But the feeling changed quickly. I filtered by female friendly and still had 8 choices. I sat there, trying to decide. Tough choice. I looked to the bathroom again. I was a bit sweaty. Places like this often allow showers. I eventually made my choice. Maria, an in shape but curvy late 20s-ish Latina. She was totally my type, and something about her just screamed that she knew how to fuck a woman. I walked back to the receptionist and announced that. "All right," she said, and looked on her computer. "Looks like Maria is with a client now and won't be available for another half hour. Are you okay waiting?" Yeah, as long as I can stay in here." "Yes, you may," the receptionist said with a smile. I looked at the bathroom. A shower would feel nice now and a good way to spend time. Can I shower beforehand? It seems you have one on site." She looked at me a little oddly. "I guess you could use the women's shower, yes, although it's usually used for our goddesses. You want to use it? It's all communal, no dividers or privacy at all." That struck me as a little odd, but all that means is that I get to see some naked chicks before my session. I started to feel a little horny. "Yep, that's fine," I remarked with a smirk. She looked a little annoyed. She led me to the room. I waited for her to open the door, but she hesitated. "You need to know the rules first," she remarked. "The only showers and soaps you can use are inside. No bringing your own. Also, no taking anything out of there. And absolutely no talking if there's anyone else inside. Not even asking to pass a bottle or anything. You must be completely naked when you enter the shower. We have lockers inside you can put your belongings in. She led me in and pointed towards a locker. "Get your things in there." "You want me to undress now? In front of you?" I was a little shocked. She sighed. "That's the policy. Remember, this is usually used by our goddesses, who are pretty used to nudity. I'll turn around while you undress." "Can't I just have the key, or is there a combination lock?" "Combination locks are not allowed on the premises, and no keys are allowed in the shower room," she tertly remarked. I was getting kind of creeped out, but oh well, whatever. She turned around while I stripped down to just my panties. Showering with a naked goddess turned me on. Stripping down in front of some fully dressed receptionist was a whole other thing. I packed in my clothes, covered my breasts with my arm, and announced to her that I was entering, and stepped inside. "No!" she screamed. She grabbed my arm as I crossed the threshold to the door. She stared at me worryingly. "Get the panties off now," she said very tensely. I complied at this point, so weirded out I couldn't even be embarrassed. She grabbed my panties and a plastic bag from one of the lockers and put them in it. What are you doing?" I asked. "These will have to be burnt. Absolutely no clothing can enter the shower room." I couldn't reply, only look at her confused. "Don't worry about it. We have a very large supply of fresh, never-worn underwear for our goddesses. I can provide you with complimentary panties once you leave. We have your size. Go shower now." She pointed to a red button on the wall. "Press this when you're done." I stepped inside, not knowing what to think now. There was one other woman in the shower, but as sexy as showering naked with another woman would normally be to me, I couldn't feel that now. I grabbed a bottle of shampoo, a clear shampoo in clear plastic bottle, and small plastic bagged piece of soap, similar to what hotels provide. As the warm water poured over me, I rubbed the shampoo in my hair. Something felt off. Not bad, but I had never had shampoo that felt like this before. Not even with menthol in it. Same thing with the soap. It felt like I was being cleansed on some deeper level. Maybe I should appreciate it. I turned around to get a view of the other woman. I felt a little pervy, but come on. That's what I was here for. She was Asian, short, and petite, and kind of smiled at me when she noticed me without saying anything. At least she didn't mind. Why this place couldn't put into viters and offer some privacy briefly crossed my mind, but whatever, it didn't matter. I just soaked in the view, soaked in the odd but nice feelings of the shampoo and soap, and calmed down. I got a little disappointed when she turned off her water and walked out of the room, but only a little. The odd feeling of the soap and shampoo now felt so good and relaxing. I finished up and stepped into the locker room. I grabbed a towel, dried off and wrapped it around me and hit the button. The receptionist was back in within a couple minutes. She was no longer distressed, but smiling, and handed me the key and a bag containing some cute panties, exactly my size. After she left, I got dressed and I considered asking where these panties came from. They were the most comfortable I ever wore, plus the shampoo and soap. I got dressed and stepped back inside and had a seat. The receptionist brought me a glass of water and announced that Maria was running a little late, but would be available in about 15 minutes. As I sat there relaxing and enjoying the water, the best I've ever had, my heart leaped a bit. A cop had stepped inside. I slipped out of my flip-flops. Not a good thing to run in if I had to rush out. I tried calming myself down. All I had done is shower. I haven't committed any crimes. I turned around to the receptionist. She didn't seem upset or scared at all. As the cop walked towards the front desk, I noticed that he actually looked pretty distraught. He had a shade of pale on his face. Pretty odd for a hardened police officer in this part of town. This had to be small potatoes. And the receptionist didn't seem upset or surprised at all. And he was wearing a backpack. Since when do cops do that? They started talking, but I couldn't make it out entirely. She turned around to a safe behind the desk and started unloading some stacks of dollar bills. Collecting a bribe, it looked like. Maybe that's how it stays open. But he didn't seem like the type of cop who'd be taking bribes with how he was feeling. They wouldn't be more nervous than the one they were taking it from. After taking the stack of bills, he put them in the backpack and then pulled out a small cloth bag and handed it to her. I couldn't shake the notion that I was witnessing a drug deal involving a bent cop. But since when are drugs sold in cloth bags? I listened to the conversation. She did say something about her superiors were almost ready, and he said something about we need more time before he left. That was it. The last straw. I sat there in silence for a couple of seconds before walking up to the receptionist. "I'm heading out," I announced nervously. I got a text message. It's an emergency." I pulled out my wallet. "How much for the panties? And I'll still give Maria a tip." The receptionist looked at me with a cold look. "That's fine. No need to pay for the panties. Not required you tip, but I'm sure she'll appreciate it." I handed over $20 and walked straight out and made a beeline to the ramp my car was at. I got home, changed into my pajamas. The anger and betrayal I had felt before had been overshadowed, but seeing my fiancée in bed brought the feelings back. I snuggled next to her as she turned around and saw me. You smell and feel wonderful. Did you just take a shower after getting back from the movie?" she remarked as she cuddled. I lied and said yes. I just didn't feel like challenging her now. The next day I confronted her outright. She started crying and then told the truth. She had been to Lady Jade's twice, once before she met me, and once a couple months back after we had our nastiest fight up until that point. And I headed out to stay at my sister's for the weekend. I kept demanding the truth, as if those were the only 2 times. She admitted there was a third, but she left before she hired anyone. She swore on this. It then hit me this was the same as what I had done. We sat down and discussed it. I told her of my desire to hurt her, and my feelings of betrayal. She was honest about the loss of interest in me due to our different work schedules. She had gotten in the habit of getting off to porn when I wasn't around, and started to be more interested in that than me. It hurt hearing that, but I believed her as she confessed in tears. I couldn't condemn her. It's not like I didn't look at porn all the time too. And she had almost cheated on me, but so had I. I might have had a more sympathetic reason, but I wasn't exactly spotless. As for the money, she had just been using it to make massive payments on her student loans so she could be totally debt-free by the time we went house hunting. And now I felt like the villain. I stayed with my sister again for a couple nights. Afterwards we talked again. We agreed to mutual forgiveness and that we would both not speak of this again. We would also both try to quit porn for at least a month and see if things could be rekindled. It worked, and as we both stood before each other in our beautiful bridal dresses, it hit me that my dream was back in place to be restored. A couple of days after our honeymoon, I was cleaning out my dresser and found those panties from Lady Jade's. I had forgotten about them, but they basically ended up at the bottom of the drawer, always overlooked like clothes sometimes are. Remembering the amazing comfort and feeling I wore them that day, but it was an issue. It was weird how they were too comfortable. Something was wrong and unnerving about this. and it was a reminder of the time I spent there. Once I got home, I changed clothes. I went to the dumpster behind our place with the panties, a matchbook, and a bucket of water, and lit them on fire and threw them to an empty corner of the dumpster. After burnt enough, I poured the water in, walked back inside, and resolved to try and forget all about it. Yet another person who a trip to Lady Jade's brought them out of a dark place and into the light. That being said, I think it would be foolish to say there's nothing dark going on at Lady Jade's. What's with the oddly numbered rooms, or the hooded figures? Why can't you talk to anyone in the shower? And why must any clothing that enters the shower room be burned? Who is Erica? And what would have happened if the special nurse hadn't used her knife on that goddess's leg after her ill-fated encounter with the man with the birthmark? I feel like these stories have given us more questions than answers. But sadly, that is all the stories we have from Lady Jade's brothel. I hope you've enjoyed your time here at Pasta AM, and I hope you'll come back for the next episode. Until then, I hope you'll support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing if you haven't already. And if you're feeling really generous, consider becoming a channel member, joining the Patreon, or perhaps purchasing one of my spicy minis that's just as lovely as any of Lady Jade's goddesses. Links are in the description. Always be sure to remove all of your clothing before stepping into the shower and checking your partners for any odd birthmarks before getting busy. With all that being said, guys, I'm Mr. Sean, and Alpha great day and an even beta tomorrow. Bye-bye.